Sometimes I feel like life is a chess game, but no one bothers to teach you the rules. Every move you make, someone else counters. Every decision, a new obstacle appears. It's like trying to navigate a battlefield blindfolded, until you realize that the battle isn't won with brute force, but with foresight, deception, and precision. Game theory isn't just about winning. It's about understanding the game itself, a hidden framework shaping everything from billion-dollar business deals to playground politics. The Art of Strategy by Avinash K. Dixit and Barry J. Nalebuff exposes this invisible code, and what's shocking isn't just that the rules exist, but that most people, even the so-called smartest among us, are playing completely wrong. Think about it. Companies go to war over prices and destroy each other in the process. Political leaders make threats they can't back up, and nations spiral into unnecessary conflicts. Job seekers flood their resumes with credentials that don't actually matter. Investors panic at the wrong moment, and negotiators blink when they should have held their ground. Why? Because they don't think ahead. They react instead of strategizing, and the cost of that ignorance is staggering. But what if you could see the moves before they happen? What if you knew when to make the first move and when to wait? When to bluff, when to commit, when to walk away? What if you could shape the game instead of being shaped by it? That's what we're going to uncover. Not theories in a vacuum, but real, high-stakes decisions, ones that change the fate of corporations, elections, and even wars. By the end of this, you won't just understand game theory, you'll wield it. Because in a world where everyone is playing the game, but few are playing it well, the greatest advantage isn't just knowing the rules, it's knowing how to break them. Imagine walking into a room where every conversation, every handshake, every glance holds a deeper meaning. It's not just small talk, it's a silent battle of wits, a hidden network of decisions shaping who wins, who loses, and who walks away with the upper hand. That's the world we live in. Every interaction is a game, and whether you realize it or not, you're already playing. The question is, do you know the rules? Game theory is the science of strategic thinking. It's the study of how people make decisions when the outcome depends not just on what they do, but on what others do as well. And once you understand it, you start seeing the world differently. You realize that business isn't just about having the best product, it's about anticipating what your competitors will do next. Politics isn't just about making promises. It's about structuring choices so your opponent is forced into a corner. Even personal relationships, negotiating with your boss, choosing where to eat with friends, raising kids, are all games with hidden strategies. But here's the shocking part. Most people don't think strategically at all. They make decisions based on instinct, habit, or what feels right in the moment. They act without considering the counter moves, without realizing they're stepping into traps laid by those who do understand the game. That's why businesses crumble, why politicians make catastrophic mistakes, why people get outmaneuvered in negotiations without even realizing what happened. Game theory changes that. It gives you a playbook. It turns every situation into a puzzle where the pieces aren't random, they're predictable. It teaches you how to influence others, how to decode their motives, and how to craft strategies that force them to act in ways that benefit you. Once you learn to think this way, you can't unsee it. It's the difference between playing chess and being a pawn. And the first step to mastering the game? Learning to think ahead. Because in a world of competition, the biggest mistake isn't making the wrong move. It's not realizing you're in a game at all. You're standing at a crossroads. Two paths stretch before you, and the wrong choice could cost you everything. How do you decide? Most people start by looking at their immediate options, what feels right, what seems easiest. But the master strategist does something different. They don't just look ahead, they think backward. This is the essence of backward induction, a way of thinking that separates those who react from those who control. It's a method used by grandmasters in chess, elite negotiators, and high-stakes investors. Instead of starting with the first move, they begin with the last. They picture the final outcome they want, then trace their steps backward to figure out what decisions will get them there. Think of a hostage negotiation. The goal isn't just survival, it's getting both sides to walk away without bloodshed. A skilled negotiator doesn't start by making demands. They begin with the endgame, a peaceful resolution, then carefully orchestrate every move to make sure the other side arrives at that conclusion too. Every word, every pause, every concession is a calculated step toward that final result. Or take business. A company entering a new market doesn't just charge in blindly. It maps out the future first. Will competitors retaliate? How will customers react? What's the long-term goal? Every move is designed not for the present, but for the inevitable reactions that will come later. Companies that ignore this end up like roadkill, blindsided by forces they failed to anticipate. Even in everyday life, backward induction is a game changer. You want a raise? Don't start with an awkward conversation. Start by asking, what would make your boss say yes? More value, more leverage, a subtle campaign to shape their perception of your worth over time? Work backward, and by the time you make the request, it will feel like the only logical choice. This mindset doesn't just help you make better decisions, it gives you control over the game itself. Because when you already know how the story ends, you're not just a player, you're the one writing the script. Imagine you're on a bridge facing an advancing army. You have two choices, retreat or fight. Most would keep the escape route open, just in case. But the master strategist? They burn the bridge. Now, there's no turning back. The only option is to fight. And because of that, they fight harder, with absolute conviction. That's the power of strategic commitment. When you make a move that limits your future choices, you send a signal, one that reshapes the game itself. You're not just making a decision, you're making it clear that you can't or won't back down, and that changes how others react to you. This is why businesses sometimes double down on risky innovations instead of hedging their bets. When a company stakes its entire future on a new technology, when it publicly commits, customers, investors, and even competitors take it seriously. The commitment itself shifts market expectations. If you waver, people hesitate. But if you go all in, you create a self-fulfilling prophecy. Credibility is the other half of the equation. A commitment only works if others believe you'll follow through. A government that threatens economic sanctions but never enforces them? Weak. A company that says it stands for quality but cuts corners? Worthless. A leader who makes promises but constantly changes direction? Untrustworthy. History is littered with failed bluffs, threats that were ignored, red lines that meant nothing, promises that unraveled the moment they became inconvenient. But the most successful players? They know that a well-placed, credible commitment can force the world to bend in their favor. Want to be taken seriously? Don't just make threats. Make it impossible for yourself to retreat. Want to build trust? Stick to your word, no matter the cost. The greatest power in any negotiation, in any competition, in any game isn't brute force. It's the ability to commit and to make others believe you mean it. Picture two wolves fighting over a carcass. There's only so much meat. One wins, the other starves. That's a zero-sum game, a world where every gain comes at someone else's expense. Now, contrast that with a farmer and a baker. The farmer has wheat, the baker has bread. If they trade, they both end up better off. That's a positive-sum game, a world where collaboration creates more value than competition alone. The problem? Most people assume life is zero-sum when it isn't. They think for one person to succeed, another must fail. That's why companies undercut each other in price wars, bleeding themselves dry. It's why rival nations escalate conflicts instead of negotiating win-win solutions. It's why some people hoard knowledge instead of sharing, afraid that helping others will somehow diminish their own value. But the smartest strategists, they know when to fight and when to cooperate. They recognize that competition is sometimes unavoidable. When two businesses are fighting over the same customers, when political candidates are vying for a single seat, when resources are truly limited. In those cases, aggression might be the only answer. But in most situations, the best strategy isn't domination, it's expanding the pie. Instead of waging price wars, companies form partnerships that unlock new markets. Instead of seeing negotiations as a battle, great dealmakers look for hidden value that benefits both sides. Even in careers, the most successful people aren't the ones who sabotage their colleagues. They're the ones who build alliances, mentor others, and create opportunities that didn't exist before. The tragedy of zero-sum thinking is that it blinds people to bigger possibilities. If you see every interaction as a battle to be won or lost, you miss the far more powerful strategy, finding ways for everyone to win. Because the ultimate game isn't about taking from others, it's about seeing what no one else sees, how to create more than what was there before. Imagine you're playing poker against someone who always bluffs when they have a weak hand and always bets big when they have a strong one. How long before you figure them out? How long before they start losing badly? The answer, not long at all. Because in any competitive game, predictability is a death sentence. That's where mixed strategies come in. The best players, whether in poker, business, sports, or war, know that if their opponents can predict their next move, they become easy to defeat. The solution? Introduce uncertainty. Keep your opponents guessing. Act unpredictably, not randomly, but strategically. A soccer player who always shoots left, the goalkeeper catches on. But if they mix up their shots, sometimes left, sometimes right, sometimes down the center, they become impossible to anticipate. A CEO who always cuts prices when competition heats up, rivals will undercut them into oblivion. But a company that sometimes competes on price, sometimes innovates, sometimes partners up, that's a player no one can corner. Even in negotiations, predictability is a weakness. If you always accept the first offer, people will lowball you. If you always push back hard, they'll come prepared for a fight. But if your responses vary, sometimes you concede, sometimes you hold firm, sometimes you walk away, you become unreadable. And an unreadable player is a dangerous one. The key to mixed strategies isn't mindless randomness, it's calibrated unpredictability. You want your actions to be just uncertain enough that no one can exploit you. This is why world-class investors, generals, and decision-makers don't follow rigid formulas. They adapt, they keep others off balance, they create doubt. Because in a game where everyone is looking for patterns, the greatest advantage is being the one pattern no one can crack. In a gold rush, who makes the most money? The prospector who stakes the first claim, or the one who waits, studies the land, and mines where the gold is richest? The answer isn't as obvious as it seems. Being first can be a massive advantage, but sometimes the real winners are the ones who come later, smarter, and better prepared. Welcome to the battle of first mover versus second mover advantage. First movers get the glory. They capture attention, define the playing field, and set the rules. They create the industry standards, lock in customers, and enjoy the psychological power of being the original. But here's the brutal truth. Being first doesn't guarantee survival. Many first movers spend so much time clearing the path that they exhaust themselves before they reach the finish line. That's where second movers strike. They learn from the mistakes of the pioneers, avoid their costly experiments, and refine what already works. They watch, wait, and enter the game at the perfect moment, when demand is proven but the flaws are exposed. They don't take arrows, they take territory. Think about technology. The first to launch an idea often burns through cash, facing problems no one has solved before. Meanwhile, the second mover studies the failures, perfects the model, and swoops in with a better, cheaper, or more efficient version. The first mover takes the risk. The second mover collects the spoils. So which strategy is better? That depends on the game you're playing. If your advantage is so overwhelming that competitors can't catch up, if you're building a fortress of patents, branding, or customer loyalty, being first is a weapon. But if the road ahead is treacherous and innovation is inevitable, sometimes it's better to let someone else be the test subject and strike when the moment is right. The real winners aren't just the first or the second. They're the ones who know which position to take and when to take it. Two criminals are arrested. They're thrown into separate rooms, no communication. The police offer each a deal. Betray your partner and go free while they take the fall, or stay silent and both serve time. What would you do? This is the prisoner's dilemma, the most famous thought experiment in game theory. It's a brutal test of trust, fear, and self-interest. If both betray, they both lose. If both cooperate, they get a better outcome. But here's the problem. Rational players don't trust cooperation. They fear the other side will betray first, so they act selfishly, ensuring mutual destruction. This isn't just a theoretical puzzle. It's real life. Businesses undercut each other in price wars, destroying profits for both. Nations engage in arms races, pouring billions into weapons instead of growth. Companies refuse to share technology, stifling innovation. Athletes take performance-enhancing drugs, not because they want to, but because they fear their competitors are doing the same. The tragedy? Most people play the game wrong. They assume competition is the only way to win. But the best strategists? They know when to cooperate. Look at industries where rivals collaborate, sharing supply chains, co-developing technology, setting industry standards. They're not being nice, they're being strategic. They understand that sometimes the real enemy isn't the competitor across the table, it's the game itself. The key is knowing when cooperation is possible and when it's a trap. Trust isn't blind, it's built. The best players test cooperation in small doses, signaling good faith but staying prepared for betrayal. They create incentives that make mutual success the best option. They rewrite the rules so the game rewards trust instead of punishing it. Because the smartest move isn't always crushing your opponent. Sometimes the real power move is making them an ally, or at least making sure that if you both lose, you lose less. You walk into a luxury store, the floors gleam, the lighting is perfect, and the staff greets you with quiet confidence. There's no neon sale sign, no desperate discounts, just understated elegance. The price tags are absurd, but somehow that makes you trust the quality even more. That's signaling. Now flip the scenario. A job applicant sits across from a hiring manager. Two candidates have the same resume, same skills, same experience. But one graduated from an Ivy League school, the other from an unknown college. The decision is made in seconds. That's screening. Signaling and screening are how we navigate uncertainty. Because in the real world, perfect information doesn't exist. Buyers can't open up a product to inspect every detail. Employers can't read minds. Investors don't know which startups will succeed. So instead, they rely on shortcuts. A signal is anything that conveys hidden information. It's why some brands deliberately price higher to suggest exclusivity. It's why politicians show up at disaster sites, not to fix things, but to project leadership. It's why startups spend millions on flashy launches, to convince investors they're a big deal before they actually are. The strength of a signal isn't in what it says, it's in what it costs. The best signals are expensive, difficult to fake, and easy to interpret. Screening is the other side of the equation. It's what decision makers do to separate signal from noise. Colleges use SAT scores. Investors look at past track records. Employers test candidates with grueling interviews. The goal isn't to find the best on paper. It's to filter out the ones who just look good at first glance. But here's the trap. Bad signals and bad screening lead to bad decisions. Companies chase candidates with fancy degrees instead of real skills. Consumers fall for marketing tricks that don't reflect actual quality. Investors back startups that know how to look successful but can't actually deliver. The best strategists don't just use signals, they engineer them. They know how to send the right message and filter out the noise. Because in a world where perception is power, what people believe about you is just as important as what's actually true. A negotiation isn't a polite conversation. It's a game of leverage, psychology, and power. Whether you're striking a business deal, asking for a raise, or trying to get a better price on a car, the winner isn't the one who talks the most, it's the one who controls the frame. Most people negotiate wrong. They focus on what they want instead of what the other side fears losing. They make offers too soon, too eagerly, and too weakly, without understanding that negotiation isn't about demands, it's about pressure. The best negotiators don't just ask, they make the other side feel like saying yes is the only rational choice. Rule number 1, never negotiate against yourself. If you throw out an offer and immediately backtrack, you've just signaled weakness. Silence is a weapon. A long pause after a counteroffer forces the other side to fill the void with concessions. Most people can't handle silence, so they start talking. And when they talk, they reveal what they're really thinking. Rule number 2, understand BATNA, the best alternative to a negotiated agreement. Your BATNA is your walk-away power. The stronger your alternative, the more leverage you have. If you're the only supplier in the market, you negotiate differently than if there are 10 competitors. If you have another job offer lined up, you negotiate salary differently than if you're desperate. The party with the better fallback always wins. Rule number 3, anchor the conversation in your favor. The first offer in a negotiation isn't just a number, it's a psychological anchor that drags the entire discussion toward it. If you throw out a high number first, the rest of the negotiation revolves around that figure. If the other side anchors first, don't accept their frame, re-anchor aggressively, or refuse to engage on their terms. Rule number 4, use strategic concessions. Concessions aren't weaknesses if they're used correctly. You don't just give something away, you trade. I can lower the price, but only if we sign today. I can agree to this, but I'll need you to meet me halfway on that. Every move should extract something in return, forcing the other side to value what you're offering. Rule number 5, know when to walk away. The biggest mistake people make is thinking they must close the deal. The moment you believe that, you've lost. The most powerful move in any negotiation is the ability to stand up, shake hands, and leave. The paradox? The moment the other side senses you're willing to walk, they often give you exactly what you wanted. A negotiation isn't won with aggression, it's won with control. The best negotiators aren't the loudest or the toughest. They're the ones who make sure, by the end of the conversation, the other person thinks they got what they wanted, while unknowingly giving you exactly what you asked for. Imagine walking into an auction where you know the true value of a painting, but no one else does. They guess. They hesitate. You, however, have certainty. That knowledge is power. You bid confidently, get the painting for a steal, and walk away with a fortune. That's information asymmetry, a hidden edge that can change the entire game. Every market, every negotiation, every decision in life is shaped by who knows what and when they know it. Buyers don't know what's happening behind the scenes in a company, but insiders do. Customers don't know the real cost of a product, but businesses do. Investors don't know which startups are truly promising, but founders do. The gap between what one side knows and what the other doesn't, that's where leverage is created. And the best strategists, they exploit this gap ruthlessly. When companies withhold information, limiting access to data, creating confusion, or revealing only what benefits them, they control the game. When negotiators mislead or strategically reveal just enough to sway a deal, they dictate the terms. When a job candidate knows exactly what an employer is willing to pay, but the employer doesn't know the candidate's alternatives, who do you think walks away with the better deal? But information asymmetry isn't just about hoarding knowledge, it's about managing perception. A skilled player doesn't just know more, they make sure their opponent knows less. They frame narratives, redirect attention, and control the flow of details to their advantage. They signal strength when they are weak and uncertainty when they are strong. The flip side, those who don't understand information asymmetry are the ones being played. The investor who buys into a hyped stock without knowing what insiders know. The consumer who overpays because they don't see the hidden costs. The job seeker who settles for less because they don't realize how much leverage they actually have. So how do you use this? Gather intelligence relentlessly. Ask the right questions. Read between the lines. And most importantly, never assume you have the full picture. Because in every game, there are two types of players. Those who control information and those who are controlled by it. Which one are you?